So, I've taken a few days to cool off, and you know what? I'm still angry. Not least because of the response that's been given by representatives of CCP in this case, and some of the attitudes expressed regarding it. Keep in mind that I'm not angry with people on this list, so much as I'm having a lot of trouble reconciling the logic expressed with any common standard of reason. I'll try to explain, and if these seem inconsistent in any fashion, please somebody explain it to me. 1. I cannot abide the "don't blame these people, blame CCP" argument. This falls short for a number of reasons, but the primary one is that CCP is not a person. CCP doesn't make decisions. It's a conglomeration of real, actual people who make decisions, and blaming what is essentially a concept enshrined in paperwork is as effective as blaming any other concept. We might as well say that Santa Claus or Cthulhu stole our wine tasting from us for all the difference that makes. However, if we are to take the argument to its logical conclusion, why attend the con at all? If you had been robbed at gunpoint, would you chase down the perpetrator to remind them that they forgot to take your credit cards as well? It's illogical to place blame on a company and then continue to support that company that stole from you, even if alternate plans arise from the remains. I think it's amazing that everyone is getting together and planning what will likely be an epic party, but doing so while supporting CCP is counterintuitive, especially since CCP, if it were a sentient being as it's being treated and could actually feel, which it still can't, doesn't give a damn, and no progress will be made in placidly accepting the situation and trying to make the best out of it. 2. Not blaming Shane is also illogical for a number of reasons, chief among them being that he spent all of last GM and most of this year bragging that GM was his, that he made it awesome, that he was the reason that it came out as well as it did, and basking in the adoration of people who thanked him for his work. Might I say, rightfully so. He did work incredibly hard last year, and GM was an amazing con. However, if he's capable and eager to accept praise for its successes, why shouldn't he also be held responsible for its failures? If GM is truly his baby, as I've heard him say on a number of occasions, why should he not be held to account for when that baby acts up? Again, this makes absolutely no sense. In regards to his regrets about this, I don't buy it. First of all, he recognizes that this was entirely wrong. Bully for him, he has at least an elementary grasp of the concept of justice. Above the age of 7 or so, perhaps younger, this is neither worthy of approbation nor recognition, and especially not amnesty from responsibility. As to his email, despite not caring enough to proofread when writing, it exhibits more concern over the PR nightmare than any conception of it actively and intrinsically being wrong. Moral behavior done out of fear of retribution doesn't actually qualify as moral behavior, especially from a person who has not actually exhibited that behavior in the past. For example, tell an expelled member and his wife, who was still a member in good standing, that legal action would be taken if either were seen anywhere in NOLA during the event, despite this being a ridiculous and petty threat, or protecting a cyber criminal by not telling the person whose email was hacked about who did so while drunkenly discussing it last year. These are not the actions of somebody who has the interests of the general membership at heart, and I find it far more likely that his professed empathy is more a result of protecting his employers from potential legal action or bad publicity than any actual care for what did happen. This should not let him off the hook, as it were, considering the adulation he readily accepts for the successes of GM, and it's frankly insulting that he believes that these words would be enough to placate anybody. 3. In regards to Rick, I really don't know him. I keep hearing that he's on this list, which is amazing, but also makes me wonder why we haven't heard a word from him since this began. I attribute this to 2 possible reasons, and if you can think of more likely ones, please tell me. First is that he has not been checking his email or hasn't read the email from this list. I find this highly unlikely considering his being instrumental in the provision of the bad news, but I'll admit it's still a possibility. Otherwise, he has been advised by lawyers at CCP that it would be unwise to discuss it. If that's the case, then I would suggest that it further demonstrates the dehumanization perpetuated by this particular corporation. That they are so afraid of both their image and any liability that something like this would cause that they are choosing to prohibit any sort of actual response by one of our own. That in and of itself demonstrates the contempt in which we are held as club members. Rick, I want to hear what you have to say. I would like to know how long you were aware this plan was in the works. Was it dropped on you randomly? Did you hear rumors that you chose not to pass along when they could have rallied people to express a preemptive dislike for this? What happened? You're one of us, so talk to us. 4. If this is the fault of people that our esteemed fairy godmother has chosen not to name, Why not? Don't these people deserve to be held accountable in polite but emphatic fashion? Do you not trust us to express our displeasure in a courteous manner? Shouldn't I be allowed, when I read about Executive A's bonus at the end of the year, to say, part of the reason why he or she got that was because he or she found a way to make money on other people's work? What about them or their actions merits protection from accountability or the perfectly reasonable ire that might be directed at them? I don't understand why not naming them is somehow the virtuous option in this case, and I genuinely would like to know your reasoning since it somewhat astonishes me. Now, CCP through their representatives have expressed their fear of bad publicity. I suggest that they deserve it. This should be sung far and wide, told to every cami possible so that they don't waste their money on what is, empirically, a stolen event. They should be made aware of what is demonstrably an injustice so that they can seriously consider this when it comes time to renew, or go to an event, or even purchase a book. You could make the argument that nothing can be done now, but that's not entirely true either. There are several things that can be done. The one that jumps immediately to mind is to return the event to the Pink Mafia. It was taken less than 2 weeks before GM, it can be returned just as easily. However, I have very little hope that this will be done. A solution other than you can pay us slightly less money would also be nice. Proceeds from the wine tasting specifically can be donated to an LGBT charity. While it's too late and entirely unfair to change the charity of the whole event, this small portion is new and can easily be dedicated, and advertised as such, to the Trevor Project, the It Gets Better Project, the Human Rights Campaign, my personal favorite, the Point Foundation, or any other of dozens of possible places. Providing matching funds wouldn't go awry either, but that may be asking too much, and considering that until last week they weren't actually planning to make any money on this, I don't think it's unreasonable to ask that they continue to at least not make any money on this. All of these things and more can be done. However, I suspect that they won't be done. I'll admit, there are things that go on that I'm not aware of. Right now, there may be a team of crack executives at Crowd Control Productions, a fitting name, I believe, in Iceland, racking their brains for ways to avoid a bunch of angry queers and allies telling everyone who will listen about the heartless, tone-deaf, and short-sighted theft of their events. Monday, there may be an email saying that they found a solution that will satisfy everybody, and actually does. If that's the case, great. They did right and deserve as much credit as possible. Until such an announcement is made, however, they deserve derision in equal measure, as do the representatives who choose to remain silent or gladly accept appropriate regard for positive outcomes. I'm not saying hate Shane and Rick for life, nor am I calling for a boycott on White Wolf in general or even cons in general, but I am suggesting that an apology absent visible action is meaningless, especially considering the behavior of the former named person, which has thus far demonstrated more concern for CCP than the members of the club, to the point of banning people from entire cities by threatening their careers and protecting criminals from prosecution. If something is done, that's wonderful, but until something is done, don't be content with expressions of regret and vague promises to make things right.